be uh, be fought just because we're weary, just because we're tired, just because we're battle worn doesn't mean that the enemy decides, well, this is a good time to give them a break. They take advantage of that opportunity, and that's exactly what we're going to see in chapter 10 into chapter 11 today. So in Joshua chapter 11, or yeah, it's chapter 10, excuse me. Chapter 10, I'm going to start reading here in verse 28, which is where we left off last time. I'm going to start reading from there, and we'll see where the Lord takes us today. So, Joshua chapter 10, starting in verse 28. Joshua captured Makkedah that day and struck it and his king with the edge of the sword. He utterly destroyed it and every person who was in it. He left no survivor. Thus he did to the king of Makkedah, just as he had done to the king of Jericho. Then Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Makkedah to Libnah and fought against Libnah. The Lord also gave it also with its king into the hands of Israel, and struck it and every person who was in it with the edge of the sword. He left no survivor in it. Thus he did to the king, just as he had done to the king of Jericho. And Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Libnah to Lachish, and they camped by it and fought against it. The Lord gave Lachish into the hands of Israel, and he captured it on the second day, and struck it with every person who was in it with the edge of the sword, according to all he had done to Libnah. Then Horam, king of Gezer, came up to help Lachish, and Joshua defeated him and his people until he had left him no survivor. And Joshua and all Israel with him passed on from Lachish to Eglon, and they camped by it and fought against it. They captured it on that day and struck it with the edge of the sword, and he utterly destroyed that day every person who was in it, according to all that he had done in Lachish. Then Joshua and all Israel with him went up from Eglon to Hebron, and they fought against it. They captured it and struck it, and with its kings and all its cities and all the persons who were in it with the edge of the sword, he left no survivor, according to all that he had done to Eglon. And he utterly destroyed it and every person who was in it. Then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to Debir, and they fought against it. He captured it and his kings and all his cities, and he struck them with the edge of the sword and utterly destroyed every person who was in it. He left no survivor. Just as he had done to Hebron, so he did to Debir and his king, as he had also done to Libnah and his king. Thus Joshua struck all the land, the hill country, and the Negev, and the lowland, and the slopes, and all their kings. He left no survivor, but he utterly destroyed all who breathed, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua struck them from Kadesh Barnea, even as far as Gaza, all the country of the Goshen, even as far as Gibeon. Joshua captured all these kings and their lands at one time, because the Lord, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. So Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. The last time we were together, we watched the army of the 5 kings attack Gibeon. Gibeon is the one city in that area who tried to make peace with Israel. Now, they did it through deception. But what we see inside that moment is this heart to escape the judgment that's coming, a heart to look at the God of Israel and go, well, peace is only available through them. And they don't know how to gain it exactly yet, but they know we're going to go to them and we're going to try to make peace. And because of that, they're going to become, we'll find this out later, they're going to become the one city allowed to remain within the promised land and be in accordance with the permissions of God. But the rest of the armies are still there. And they come and they attack Gibeon. And when Israel showed up and they're fighting against them, we saw how the battle began to be pursued, how the Lord fought for Israel, casting down hailstones. The army began to scatter, some to the northwest, but most of them going down to the south toward Makkedah into this particular area down here. And in this area, in this lower area, that is where they find the 5 kings inside of a cave at Makkedah. Now, this particular map I'm showing you this week has Makkedah over here by Hebron. That's probably not the right location. We don't know exactly where it is. It makes the most sense that it's over here by Libnah, and we'll come back around to why that is here in a second. But they address the 5 kings. Now they're in this area where they're fully in the middle of enemy territory. And they have one of a couple of choices. They can turn right around and go right back to Gilgal, and puts them in an incredibly dangerous position, because now you have an agitated enemy who is wounded and motivated against you to your rear. You're already in this area. You have to address these hot pockets now. You have to address these people that have already mobilized against you. You're not wondering if they're going to attack you. They've already attacked. They've already mobilized the army, so you have to address them. So what Israel begins to do is work in a circuit through this area, starting with Libnah. Now, he takes Makkedah because they're there, because the cave is there, and then he takes Libnah. Now, these 2 particular cities will both have the same phrase around them, that he did to them just as he did to Jericho. In these verses, we're going to see a couple ideas repeated again and again. One of those is Joshua and all Israel with him went to battle. We're going to see that something like 6 times in the text. We're also going to see, just as he did to this place, he did to this place, starting with the 2 Jerichos right at the very beginning. The other idea that we're going to see a lot as we go through today is, depending on your translation, Joshua utterly destroyed, he totally destroyed, or he put everything under the ban. We're going to see this idea repeatedly, and it is a hard one, and as Christians and as Bible students, we need to face what is in the text. If we believe that all of the Bible is inspired and all of it is profitable for us, for godliness, for instruction, to live lives pleasing to God and to keep us inside of his will, we need to understand that these concepts are inside the Bible. And God doesn't sugarcoat it. He doesn't hide behind it. We're going to see twice that the Lord is the one who commanded this. So we need to understand what it is that's going on, and then try to understand what God's heart is in it as well. He begins to go through this circuit, city after city. Now, we just got done with the battle of the army of the 5 kings. Only 3 of the cities he's about to take are part of that 5-king army. He's going to pass right by Jerusalem up here. Jerusalem's the one who started the whole thing. It was their king that went and contacted everybody. They don't mess with Jerusalem now. It may be because of where it's located, and if you go with us to Israel, you'll see how it's tucked high into these hills in that area. It's almost sort of off the beaten path. You have to very intentionally go through there. And because he was going through these various cities in this path, it was just inconvenient for them to go into Jerusalem at that time. But some of these cities he's going to go through. He goes through Libnah first, then he goes into Lachish. Now, Lachish is one of the armies of the 5 kings, but you see what happens is there's a city all the way up here, Gezer, which is in Philistine territory. It doesn't appear to be filled with Philistines, but it's in an area with a lot of Philistine towns. When this particular king gets word that Israel is now fighting with Lachish, the king of Gezer, this is verse 33, he sends his army down to help. Now, this is one of those don't start none, there won't be none situations. They came and got Israel's attention, so Israel had to address them there. Israel didn't go and siege Gezer all the way up there. They sent their army, and because of that, Joshua had to handle it. And when he handled the battle, he didn't leave any survivors out of the army. They continue to move around. They come down here to Eglon, but here they kind of break the circuit and go up to Hebron up here. Hebron is one of the high places. Hebron is an extremely important city in the history of Israel. One of the aspects we have, it go all the way back to Numbers. Hebron is going to be the city known for having these 3 giants inside of the city. We often hear about the 5 brothers with Goliath, right? But there's 3 giants inside of the city, and it keeps coming back to them. Often when Hebron is being described during this particular time in Israel's history, it's described about the 3 sons of Anak that are there. These 3 sons are giants. They're known for being mighty warriors. And that's one of the ways that we know this. Perhaps another way and a better way, known way, is that this is Caleb's city. When Caleb went through Israel as one of the 12 spies, because of his faithfulness, the Lord said him, God told him to him, the very land that you saw with your own eyes and you walked on, I'm going to give that land to you. When we get to Joshua chapter 14, we're going to see Caleb call that promise in. He goes, you remember I did this, how I was faithful, and God said, and now I want that city. And during this time, we see the initial battle to take it. And when we get to Joshua chapter 14, we're not entirely sure if that is describing the battle that we read about here in chapter 10. The reason why that kind of matters, the length of the war of Israel for the promised land, we believe to be 7 years. And the reason we know that are the age dates that Caleb gives us in Joshua 14. And if he goes and he claims it, and he has this speech with Joshua, and that is at the end of the war, then the war is 7 years. If not, if it's earlier in it, at this particular moment is when they're going along and Caleb goes, hey, before we do this other one, I want to get my city now, then that means the war is actually much, much longer than 7 years. It seems most likely that Caleb doesn't try to receive his land until after the land is already sort of pacified and everyone begins to receive their portion. Then Caleb goes, okay, I'm first in line. So another reason why Hebron is going to matter is while it is the city of Caleb, Caleb is the one who personally goes up there at an 85-year-old man and takes these giants down in order to take the city. He loses it. In Israel, it's going to be 6 cities of refuge. 6 cities where a person who accidentally slaughters or killed somebody can go to, so the manslayer can run to the city and be safe. Hebron is going to become one of those 6 cities. It will be a Levite city of refuge. Caleb, who fought so hard to take it, will lose it. And we'll talk about that when we get to that particular chapter as well. The last reason you may know the city of Hebron is that Hebron, the city of refuge, Caleb's city, will become the seat of David's power as a king for the first 7 years of his reign. We're used to thinking about David in Jerusalem, but the first 7 years, he wasn't. Instead, he was here in Hebron, and that is where he was first king. We have descriptions about this particular battle from other places, but after Hebron, we're told in the text that they go back and they come down here to Debir. Debir is in this local area. It's going to become family land for the family of Caleb. What is interesting about Debir, which is for some reason misspelled on the map, but hey, what can you do? Debir is not taken by Caleb. It's taken by his nephew and his future son-in-law, Othniel. Othniel, Judges chapter 3, is the first judge of Israel. The first time they go and they get in a mess because they're not following God and they cry out and he sends someone to lead them out of that is going to be Caleb's son-in-law, his nephew. And Othniel will be the one to take the city of Debir. Now, once they have done this and they have begun to pacify the south and they have addressed those armies that will openly march toward them in battle, that southern portion is done. That's the end of the southern campaign. And they come back all the way up here to Gilgal, which has been their home base since early in Joshua. And that is where we go into chapter 11. So look at chapter 11 for me now. Then it came about, when Jabin, king of Hazor, heard of it, that he sent to Jobab, king of Madon, and the king of Shimron, and the king of Ashvath, and to the kings who were of the north in the hill country, in the Arabah, south of Chenoroth, that's the Sea of Galilee, and in the lowland, and on the heights of Dor on the west, to the Canaanite on the east and west, and the Amorite, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Jebusite, in the hill country, and the Hivite at the foot of Harmon, that's Mount Harmon, and the land of Mizpah. They came out, they and all their armies with them, as many people as the sand that is on the seashore, with very many horses and chariots. So all these kings, having agreed to meet, came and encamped together at the waters of Merom, and look at this at the end of verse 5, to fight against Israel. This is how we started today. Even though we're weary, even though we're battle worn, even though our bodies are still healing from scars, the enemy doesn't take this as an opportunity to give us a break. He takes it as an opportunity to send the next attack. And we talked about this when we looked at the Battle of the 5 Kings. How the Lord kept saying to Joshua, do not be afraid, I am with you. Do not be afraid, I'm going to fight for you. And then Joshua would take that encouragement and put that into the hearts of the Israelites when he had his commanders go and put their foot on the necks of the 5 kings. And he was told them the encouragement he had received 7 times. He looks at them and goes, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, because the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. He goes before you to fight your battles. And the way we ended that last particular study is they didn't know it, but they would need it, because at the time that this is going on, a bigger army is forming, and that is what we just saw at the beginning of chapter 11. This word goes out that Israel is not just taking a couple cities here and there. They just took the entire south. And when word gets to the king of Hazor all the way up here in the north, he calls everybody to war. And we're going to find out in these verses that the king of Hazor is sort of the chief. He has the highest amount of influence in this area. So there's several cities that are vassal kingdoms under him. And everybody else, if Hazor moves, they're going to pay attention. That's going to be very important in just a bit. But we have the description there in those couple of verses. You could put next to them in the margin, he called everyone. Everyone in the north. Every single army, every single city that had troops, they all gather them together. Verse 4 says they come together and they're like the sand of the seashore. That's how big the army is that is gathering against them. At the time, Israel has somewhere around, remember, 600,000, 601, 730,000 people minus a few. But this is so many people that they dwarf the standing army of Israel. This is what they're going to face, and they all come with a singular heart. We're going to fight against them. We're going to destroy the nation of Israel. Now, just as they're all getting word of what Israel's doing, they have word about why they're there. They've heard about what the Lord God has done in Egypt, how he allowed them to cross through the Red Sea, how he allowed them to cross through the Jordan River. What he did at the city of Jericho, making the walls fall flat, these mighty cities right there in the center, then down into the south. These are all strongholds inside of this area. And their God has delivered a city after city, casting down hailstones, fighting on their behalf. And instead of going, you know what, we can't fight against this guy, they go, you know what, the army's just not big enough. And if our army is big enough, then we can defy the will of the God of Israel. The end of verse 5 is extremely important, because when we look at all these mentions of utterly destroy, utterly destroy, utterly destroy, we need to understand why. The understanding of the why is right there. It's revealed inside that heart. They didn't come to ask for mercy from God. They weren't trying to repent, and God just didn't give them a chance. Their heart is to defy the will of God, to lay low those who are called according to his purposes. And it's not that God just fought because he felt like fighting. He says he fights for Israel. That's the way chapter 10 ends. He fights against those who would dare to come against his people. And this is the articulation we need to have as we continue through this passage. They didn't come to just defend themselves. They came to actively fight against Israel. Now, the way this army forms is everything. Gilgal's all the way down here where Joshua is. So we're kind of here in this area. The center portion has been taken of Israel. Everything north of that is forming against them. So it's kind of over half of Israel that's occupied at this point. They're going to come all the way up here to the waters of Merom. That is a reference to a river that goes off towards the northwest portion of Israel. What is interesting is that down here is the Jezreel Valley, also called Megiddo. You probably know it as Armageddon. It is the bigger coastal valley in that area. It is a better battlefield where more of your people can be spread out there and maneuver, and they would have been able to utterly surround Israel if that is the place they chose to do the battle. But they didn't. Instead, they pull all their armies into this valley up here, just south of Hazor, because it's close to the leader. But it is not the best battleground. Now look at verse 6. Then the Lord said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid of them, for tomorrow at this time I will deliver all of them slain before Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." Now, pause real quick. God tells him, do not be afraid, because Joshua was afraid. After all the times God has poured into him and told him and reassured him, what we see here is a godly man who is doing what it is that the Lord has asked him to do. And yet still the circumstances are so great that he feels uncertainty inside of his heart. There is not a place on this side of heaven that you're going to have it all figured out. That you never need to be reassured yet again. Don't worry. Don't be anxious. Don't be afraid. And the reason why the Bible is filled from beginning to end with this reassurance is because we need it. We need to be told yet again, do not be afraid. We need to be told yet again, do not be anxious. We need to be told yet again, do not be dismayed. Why? Because we're gonna. And there is nothing wrong with you if you feel and struggle with these things. It is part of being in a fallen world surrounded by pain and feeling utterly overwhelmed by the situation that you're in. Because you are not able. I am not able. But our God is more than able. And what he keeps crying out in all these moments inside of the battle is the reassurance of this: I fight for you. Once in Exodus, twice in Deuteronomy, and twice in Joshua, we keep being told, The Lord is the one who fights for you. The Lord is the one who fights your battles. It is not up to you to worry about these things all on your own. And as double reassurance inside of this, if you look at verse 6, he says that part of the battle, when you go there, don't worry, I'm going to give them all to you slain, but then their horses and chariots are going to be left. And I want you to go and I want you to hamstring all of the horses, which sounds really, really mean. What do the poor horses do? Just let them go run free, right? When we look at horses, especially as folks in the West and folks in America, we tend to look at these, consider them as these beautiful animals, beloved passions for many. But during that time, that is not how they were being considered. What they were the representation of military might. Particularly for chariots at that time, it was the cutting edge of military technology. And so what he's saying is, look at these and do not use them. Now, it's the same exhortation that the Lord is going to give for future kings in Deuteronomy when he says there's 3 don'ts. Don't multiply wives, don't multiply gold, and don't multiply horses. Don't build this huge army around you thinking, well, now I don't need God because my army is big enough. What he was saying is that when this army is laid low, you're going to have all this new technology to avail yourself with, and I don't want you to use any of it. For them, for us, their hamstringing the horses is like us having a row of battle tanks and taking thermite grenades and putting on the engine blocks, so now they're utterly worthless and they can't be used at all. He's saying render them helpless so that you're not even tempted to use them anymore. Israel will struggle with this lesson. In 2 Chronicles chapter 14, the kingdom is already split. There's a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. The southern kingdom hears word that Ethiopia has sent their army against them, and they have sent a 1,000,000-man army against Israel. King Asa is the king at that time, and he will trust the Lord. He will cry out to God, and God will deliver this 1,000,000-man army into their hands so that they are no longer a threat to them at all. Everything's going great. King Asa is a good king, by and large, generally speaking. But then 2 chapters later, 2 Chronicles chapter 16, now the northern kingdom has started to move down south. A significantly smaller army than a 1,000,000-man army that has already attacked them. And when King Asa hears word that the army from the northern kingdom of Israel is attacking south into Judah, what he does is he takes a bunch of gold and he takes items from the temple and he sends it to the king of Syria. And he says, be my friend. Would you keep me safe? And that king does. He moves down south. And he starts to attack the north side of Israel so that Israel leaves the south and they send their army all the way back up to the north. But here's the problem. King Asa has no longer trusted the Lord. So the Lord sends a prophet to King Asa, and he says this, when the Ethiopians were attacking you, you trusted me. And I gave this huge army into your hands. But now, because you didn't trust me anymore, I can't deliver the Syrians into your hands the way that I wanted to. Don't you understand this? That the eyes of the Lord move to and fro throughout the earth, that he may strongly support those whose heart is completely his. Can I put it to you another way? God is looking for someone he can bless. And he wants to bless those who totally trust in him. This is the lesson that Joshua is being taught before this battle, with the entire north coming against him. This overwhelming army coming against him, and God is going, Joshua, I need you to trust me. I need you to trust me, buddy. You cannot do this on your own. Now look at verse 7 in chapter 11. So Joshua and all the people of war with him came upon them suddenly by the waters of Merom and attacked them. The Lord delivered them into the hand of Israel so that they defeated them and pursued them as far as Great Sidon and Misrephoth-maim and the valley of Mizpah to the east. And they struck them until no survivor was left to them. Joshua did this to them as the Lord told him. He hamstrung their horses and burned their chariots with fire. So Joshua does what he's told to do. They go and they march up to battle, and they come upon them suddenly, just like they did with the army of the 5 kings. So what we see is God pouring into them the strength and the equipping and the speed they would need to travel this tremendous distance to get up there rapidly. They descend upon them. They go to battle, and everyone splits. Now, part of them are going to go over to the greater Sidon area, which is off to the northwest. The other part is going to split off to the east towards the Valley of Mizpah, just south of Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon, it's going to keep having this reference to Hermon, represents the northernmost point of the promised land that they're going to take at this time. Later on, we'll see references way down here to I'll get to that later. All right, so they're moving in these two areas, and Joshua is sending everybody out to go and chase these armies as they go. Now, here's the brilliance of our God. We see this overwhelming army gathering together, and we're like, this is too hard. Why would God ask us to do a terrible thing like this? Why would he allow our enemies to come against us and overwhelm us like this? And you know what God sees? He sees efficiency. He says, rather than let you have to go through or make you have to go through thousands of cities in the north during this time. And we know there's a bunch, because in a bit, and when we go through some of the future chapters, we're going to read city after city and hundreds of Hebrew cities. Get ready for that fun coming. And rather than make them go to each of these cities and take them, he goes, you know what? We're going to do it all at once. And I'm going to bring all these armies to you so I can deliver them into your hands all at the same time. God prepared this just so he could deliver them into their hands. In verse 9, we see that Joshua was faithful to what he was told. He hamstrung the horses and burned their chariots with fire. He is trusting in the Lord God, knowing that he alone is his strength. In verse 10, we read, then Joshua turned back at that time and captured Hazor and struck its king with the sword, for Hazor formerly was the head of all these kingdoms. They struck every person who was in it with the edge of the sword, utterly destroying them where there was no one left who breathed. And he burned Hazor with fire. Joshua captured all the cities of the kings and all their kings, and he struck them with the edge of the sword and utterly destroyed them, just as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. However, Israel did not burn any cities that stood on their mounds except Hazor alone, which Joshua burned. All the spoil of these cities and the cattle and the sons of Israel took as their plunder. But they struck every man with the edge of the sword until they had destroyed them. They left no one who breathed. When we read this, Hazor sticks out because we're told that it's the only city that Joshua burned. Now, two things are going on at the exact same time. When we looked at the southern campaign, city after city was torn all the way down and burned down to the ground. Nothing is left. This is interesting. It is later on going to protect Judah, because Joshua in this initial conquest will clear it of many of the people that are going to be negative influences up in the north. What we will find later on is that Israel is going to start to allow some of these Canaanite people to stay in the land, and the influence is going to lead to their eventual downfall. They will go into captivity over 100 years prior to Judah because they didn't drive out the people who should not have been there. But the reason why Hazor matters and the reason why it's burned down to the ground is go all the way back to verse 1. Who is the one who called all the armies to gather together? The king of Hazor. It represents the leadership for the northern coalition. The reason that a northern campaign is needed at this time is because their king is the one who called all the armies and used his influence to fight against God. This is why that particular city has to be burned down. We can't allow that leadership to remain inside of our lives. As Christians, we need to look for those things that are bringing it up. What is the thing that's allowing that sin to fester inside of us to be so appealing? What is it that allows that opportunity to exist in our life at all? And that's where we need to start. We cut the head off the snake so that it doesn't have the ability to have influence in our life. Then we handle everything else after that. He goes to that city. It's right there next to the battlefield. And he burns it all the way down to the ground. But he doesn't with the other cities. By and large, in the north, a lot of these cities are going to remain intact because, see, God also made a promise. Not only that he would always be with them, not only that he was going to fight on their behalf, but in Deuteronomy chapter 6, he told them, when you go into the promised land, you're going to dwell in cities you did not build, and houses filled with things that you did not buy. You will drink from cisterns which you did not dig, and eat from vineyards that you did not plant. These cities cannot all be destroyed because Jerusalem or Israel is going to live inside of these cities. They're going to be cleared out of the enemies. And how do they know that? Because all the enemies gathered in one valley so Israel could fight them all at the same time. But as these cities are being cleared out one by one, They are looking at their future homes, the places where they are going to live. The cities will remain, but the people will not be allowed to stay. Starting in verse 15, we see the summary of the war. Just as the Lord had commanded Moses his servant, so Moses commanded Joshua, and so Joshua did. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord had commanded Moses. Thus Joshua took all that land, the hill country and all the Negev and all the land of Goshen, the lowland, the Arabah, the hill country of Israel and its lowland from Mount Halak, which reaches towards Seir. So pause real quick. That's the southern campaign that we just read in the first and 16 and the first part of 17. Mount Seir is a reference to Edom all the way down in the south. And then picking up, even as far as Baal Gad in the valley of Lebanon at the foot of Mount Hermon. Remember, that's our northernmost extent. So now this is the northern campaign summary statement. And he captured all their kings and struck them down and put them to death. Joshua waged war a long time with all these kings, 7 years. There was not a city which made peace with the sons of Israel except the Hivites, living in Gibeon. They took them all in battle. For it is of the Lord to harden their hearts to meet Israel in battle in order that he might utterly destroy them, that they might receive no mercy, and that he might destroy them, just as the Lord commanded Moses. In these verses, we see the summary of the overall war. The results of the southern campaign, the results of the northern campaign. But then we have these two back-to-back verses we need to understand. The two back-to-back verses tell us, verse 19 and verse 20, is that there is only one city that didn't attack Israel and tried to make peace. It was only the Gibeonites. Nobody else tried. Nobody else tried to make nice and were told no. Everybody else, their response to Israel was to fight against them, to try to destroy them, to reveal the wickedness inside of their hearts. And because of that, only one city is allowed to dwell inside the nation of Israel and will actually be incorporated over time. We talked about this in previous chapters. They will be so close to Israel, they will eventually become associated with the tabernacle, and the tabernacle will be moved to their city. But then we read verse 20. And our God does not bury the lead. He takes the responsibility for the utter destruction of these cities, and he goes, do not blame Joshua. Do not blame my servant. You want to blame anybody, then you blame me. And what God does in this moment is not arrogance or brash. But he also doesn't move aside and let someone else take the bad rap for his decisions. He goes, I'm the one that ordered this. And I'm the one who hardened their hearts. Which sounds awfully unfair. Well, how can you blame them? How can you be mad at them? How can you send armies to destroy them when you're the one that made their hearts hard? Our error is when we look at a phrase like this, sometimes we think, well, that means that you made them do what they didn't want to do. That is not at all what the word means. The Hebrew word literally means this, to make strong. It means that the people had a decision and God hardened it because this is the decision you made. Now, Israel would have understood this. This isn't in the aftermath of their deliverance from Egypt. And over the course of those plagues with Egypt, 6 times we're going to see Pharaoh harden his own heart. Before the 7th plague, after the 6th plague, which is the plague of boils, we're told that God hardened the heart of Pharaoh. So that now they cannot avoid the 7th plague, which is the plague of hailstones that are going to fall. And again, we look at it and we go, well, that's unfair. You didn't give them a way out. No, keep reading, because after he says that he hardened the heart of Pharaoh, so now they cannot avoid this plague, it is the first plague that he gives them a choice to avoid it. He goes, now you can do one of 2 things, because I am telling you this plague of hailstones are coming. And if you go inside your house, you will be safe. But if you do not believe the words of the Lord, if you do not fear me, and you leave your people out, then your people will suffer. It is the first plague that has a choice. It is the first opportunity to decide, will you believe the words of the Lord or will you not? See, those who went inside their house were safe. This is the true meaning of predestination. The way predestination is used sometimes in our current age, it means that God picked out beforehand whether you were going to heaven or you were going to hell. That's not what the word means. What the word means is that if you decide to be in Christ, if you choose to believe in who he is, surrender your life to him, then your destiny is him. If you believed in the words of the Lord, if your faith turned into action and you went inside that house, then you were predestined to be safe. After that plague, after the seventh plague fell, Pharaoh was allowed to make a decision for himself. And you know what decision he made? Pharaoh hardened his own heart. And after that point, God hardens it, and he's not allowed to turn away again. He had all of his chances. He had the opportunity to choose what it is that he was going to do. And we serve a God who respects our choices. 400 years prior to that moment, God was speaking to Abraham in Genesis chapter 15. And he's telling him, I'm going to give you these descendants. This land that you live, I'm going to give this land to you as well. But inside of Genesis chapter 15, verse 16, he says this to Abraham. He goes, but I'm not going to give it to him yet. They're going to spend 400 years in a land that is not their own, being oppressed by people who do not have a heart for him. And the reason that I'm not going to give your people this land right now is because the sin of the Amorites is not complete. God didn't just show up one day and decide, I don't like these people here, and they're going to have to get out because I'm going to bring my people in. For over 400 years, he tried to reach the Amorite people. For over 400 years, he convicted their heart. For over 400 years, they knew there was a God over Israel because Abraham had dwelled inside of their land. And for 400 years, they had filled it from end to end with sin. At some point, there has to be a judgment. At some point, there has to be righteousness. That's the whole point of hardening their hearts. And we're like, well, that's mean. Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been driving along and you see someone driving erratically and you look around and go, where's a cop when you need one? One morning, I was working morning watch when I was still in the police department, and it was real early in the morning, like 5:30, something like this, and those early working folks were going to work at that time, and these some of the hardest working folks, man. You got to have a heart for them. And traffic's kind of light, but I'm sitting here at this four-way stop, four-way traffic light, and the car next to me just runs the red light. And I'm sitting there going, where's a cop when you need one? And everyone in the intersection is all looking at me. I'm like, oh, that's me. All right. Woo, woo. And I go and I pull them over. If you've ever had that heart, you cry for righteousness. You cry for justice to be done. For 400 years, they have filled that land with sin. They had killed their own children. They had oppressed the weak. And at some point, justice must be done. In this particular moment, God used Israel to be the hand and his tool of judgment upon that land. But it doesn't mean that the Jewish people are above reproach, because when they filled the same land with sin, God sent the Assyrians to be the tool of his wrath, the rod of his anger. And when the Assyrians filled the land with sin, God set the Babylonians on them. And when the Babylonians filled the land with sin, God set the Persians against them. Now, look in verse 21 for me. Then Joshua came at that time and cut off the Anakim from the hill country, from Hebron, from Debir, from Anab, and from the hill country of Judah, and from all the hill country of Israel. Joshua utterly destroyed them with their cities. There were no Anakim left in the land of the sons of Israel, only in Gaza and Gath, and in Ashdod some remained. So Joshua took the whole land according to all that the Lord had spoken to Moses. And Joshua gave it for an inheritance to Israel according to the divisions by their tribes. Thus the land had rest from war. In these last couple of verses, God takes a moment just to address what happens to the giants inside of the land. And the reason he does this, the reason why he specifically pulls out the Anakim, so these are the giants like Goliath inside of the land, is because they're a huge reason why Israel refused to go into the promised land 38 years prior. Numbers chapter 13, we get the report from the spies. 10 of the spies says, it's a wonderful land. There is no way we can take it because there are these giant people in the land and their cities are strong. And when Israel hears about these giants in the land, they start to weep. Why did God bring us here just to die at the hands of these people? Doesn't he know what's going to happen to our little kids if they take us all down? Here we see that if only they had trusted him, they would have been in the land for 38 years already by this point. But because one generation refused to listen to him, they fell in the wilderness. But the very kids that they claim God didn't care about, they're the ones to take the giants down. Our God is a beautiful God, and he does not give up on us, but he respects our decisions, and he allows us to incur consequences for the decisions that we make. But he doesn't take our guilt and place that upon our kids. Yes, they have to walk in the wake of our decisions often, but he has a plan for them. And when their kids believe in him the way that their parents don't, they're the ones to take the giants down. Now the northern campaign is complete. The southern is always quiet, and the land finally has rest from war. It does not mean that there's not battles to fight. There are still so much to do. But there are no cities willing to enter into open war with Israel anymore. Nobody else is forming coalitions to fight against Israel. So the time for open warfare is done, and it's time to start dwelling in the land. Father, we love you, and we are a people